with several with two marquee matchups and several small matchups this week. The Southeastern Conference and the top 25 was definitely on full display, with a couple of newcomers that were definitely trying to make their names known in the top 25, also with teams that were trying to also hit some history. Want to find out the results of week 8 and which teams made impacts and which ones did not? Find out next on Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Welcome back, all you gabbers. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Of course, I am the one and only Mr. CeeLo, back for you here again. And as many of you know, I am an avid college football fan, and I love the game. I love sitting around watching college football. If I could do just one thing all day, every day, it would definitely be watching college football. And before we get started, as always, I got to give a shout out to my man Brad, whom once again is just out there just throwing his thing down, showing us all he knows his thing. I got to have you on the show, brother, when we go live. It says, as he says, deuces, go dogs. I can't say it. Gosh, it don't even sound right saying it. Yeah, I changed the shades. I was in a different studio, so the lighting was different. What's up, my man? Yeah, definitely. Prime's definitely a better player than he is a coach. I can't hate on the peanut butter pancakes. You can't put peanut butter on pancakes, Brad. I'm just saying, bro. You can't do that. That's a no-no, man.
Bruh.
I think Primetime is a sinking ship, and he's not going down with the ship. Agreed. Not a fan of Primetime. I think the problem. I'm not gonna call him what he wants, because the reality of it is, you got to earn that title. Penn State sucks. I just don't think they deserve to be up there. And you're very welcome, Brad, for the gab outs. Definitely, my friend. I appreciate you engaging, because that's what this is all about. Definitely want to give a gab out to my girl Natasha. You know, she's going to be an avid fan, and she's the only reason why I'm going to do a highlight of those Sooners. So, I promise you guys, I want you to engage. So, the more you engage, the more you become part of the fan base, and I will attempt to do your favorite team no matter how lowly they are. I mean, I have to put up with Brad's Bulldogs.
Damn you.
Bruh. And I'll get into those. You might not like what I got to say, Brad, or maybe you do. But let us get started as we start things off with two unranked teams, the 3-3 South Carolina Gamecocks and the 4-2 Oklahoma Sooners. South Carolina 35, Oklahoma 9. Now, I was talking with Natasha a little bit on stream. Well, I wasn't actually talking. I was messaging her while she was on her stream. So we were talking about it, and she was like, you know what? It starts with F and ends with U. I try not to use profanity here on the show. But, and South Carolina was just putting an absolute beat down on Oklahoma. It was 32-3 at the half. I'm like, looking at this game, and I'm thinking to myself, what is Brent Venables doing? He can't even stop anybody. And that is his meat and potatoes, is stopping people. Now he can't even do that. And it's just gotten progressively worse, even with the quarterback situation just absolutely being a dumpster fire. It's terrible. Oh, by the way, Brad, I do my best with the jokes. So at least that's why I put the joke, that's why I put the... But appreciate you anyway. No. I mean, we're sitting here and we're watching. Well, I was watching the game while I was flip flopping from the Miami game, and Jackson Arnold is. I mean, it's just a horrible thing to watch. It really is, and you saw him throw a touchdown pass, a bomb that went for 6, but the reality of it is this is a situation that has got to get better. You have got to this has got to get better for Oklahoma. I mean, this is just there ain't no ifs, ands, and buts about it. It's got to get better. Yeah, I mean, the throw to Brendan Thompson was just beautiful, and it's got to. That's all I can say. It's got to get better. I mean, you're getting decent blocking, but the problem is the quarterback play has just been abysmal. When we were talking about that, and they're saying they got 5 wide receivers injured, but here's the thing. It ain't always about the wide receivers being hurt. Your wide receivers were hurt when you had the quarterback play that was not that good. So we could throw that out the window. The fact is you need a quarterback, and this is unheard of at Oklahoma. Yeah, I heard so many people that I've talked with say Oklahoma has receiver problems. They ain't the only problems you got. You might be looking for a coach. But South Carolina 35, Oklahoma 9. The other issue with this is you couldn't stop anybody. I get it. You had turnovers. You had 2 interceptions. I get it. But to be down 32-3 at the end of the first half? That's for you, Natasha. Let us move on to number 25, Navy. This game held a lot of interest to me, and you guys will know why at a later date. If you want to know, go to my show, Talk Like a Champion. That's my Fighting Irish show. So you already know then. Number 25 Navy goes to 6-0. The number 25 Navy midshipmen 51, Charlotte 17. And with this victory, the Navy go to 6-0 for the first time since the year of my birth, 1979.
Who cares?
And I'm going to be honest with you guys. These guys look really, really good. Now, I want you guys to think about something. Blake Horvath went 7 of 13, 117 yards, and this is passing, for 3 touchdowns. Now, I want you guys to really imagine this. How can you score 51 points in this era and only throw 13 passes and 177 yards? Here's the kicker. And if any of you guys know about Navy, and I know them well, the numbers jump out at you when it comes to rushing. But in this game, it doesn't. Because you have 171 yards on the ground, as Alex Teska had 8 carries, had 2 touchdowns on 8 carries. But then here's the other thing. Of course, as we said, you got 3 touchdowns through the air. And what's really interesting about this is Teska, the running back, had one on a wheel route that was blown coverage. But it was a great play design. But looking here, you look at they had one recovered fumble, and Charlotte had 1 lost fumble, and not to mention Navy had 4 interceptions of Charlotte, 2 of which, count them, 1, 2, both by Deshaun Peel, went back for touchdowns. And the senior is going to be a dangerous adversary for the Irish next week. But looking at this game, the one thing that I look at, Navy is very good tackling the football. They tackle Charlotte exceptionally well. They continue to run their game the way they want to run it. And that is the problem with a lot of teams nowadays. They'll go away from what they do well to suit the defense. This ain't Navy. Navy's going to run that triple option continuously. They're not going to stop. This year, they have got some major weapons on this side of the football, with this side being the offensive side of the ball. Deshaun Field is a very ball-hawking type secondary player. But when you look at the totality of what Navy brings to the table, they still bring that 3-4, but they're much quicker than they've been. You know with Navy, you're always going to get textbook discipline as well as the sure tackling. However, this time you get the speed and a lot of the size that they have not had in previous. Now, I'm not saying every position they're there, but I'm saying when you get a guy like Alex Texa who can catch it and run it, and they've got so many different elements to their running game this season. They're going to be extremely tough to beat from anyone, and I don't think anybody can. People want to say that this team is not this and that, and it's assignment football. The truth of the matter is we can sit here and we can talk till we're blue in the face. And the reality of it is what it is. And until people start to come to the grips that the triple option is what it is, then we'll just be having this discussion day in and day out. But the Navy Midshipmen 51, Charlotte 17. Next, we have number 23 Army, the 7-0 Army Black Knights 45, and East Carolina 28. The Black Knights are 7-0 for the first time since 1996. My last fall in school. That's right. Let's take a look at the Army Black Knights. Bryson Daly had 147 yards passing on 7 of 10 attempts and had a touchdown pass. Then you look at Bryson Daly, who had 31 carries, 171 yards, 5 scores. So Daly had 6 total scores. And what makes this offense so dangerous, as I said, another triple option type offense, you have to stay disciplined. You cannot cheat. And what happens, Army makes you play assignment. Everybody sits there and says assignment football is so easy. But Navy, Army like Navy, they have the players that make this thing work and can hurt you badly. 45 points against Eastern Carolina. Now, I will say this. Their defense does have a little bit to be desired. Their defense is not nearly as stout as the Midshipmen. This is going to make for an exciting matchup when they face off against Notre Dame and Navy. But once again, looking at Daly, who had 6 total scores, and this is the first time that the Army Black Knights have been 7-0 since 1996. Then we had number 22 Illinois 21, Michigan. Number 24 Michigan falls to 4-3. Michigan, number 24 Michigan 7. This was a game that in real time you can see that the Wolverines are struggling on offense. I mean, it's just right there. You see it. Jack Tuttle was 20 of 32, 208 yards and interception. They were able to run the ball somewhat successfully. You had Khalil Mullings had 87 yards on the ground through 19 carries with a score. Donovan Evers had 7 carries for 38. And it just looked like so much that Michigan they just had to work excessively hard to get what they got in this game. And then we look and we see that there was not much as far as we see. Now I will say this, Colston Loveland had 7 grabs, 83 yards. Now, this may be something that the Wolverines want to go back to. I don't know. But to look at what Illinois did, Luke Altmaier was 9 of 18 for 80 yards passing. 80 yards passing. And when we look at the totality of this football game, look here. Wolverines had more first downs. They had more third down conversions. They had more total yards. Now, Illinois had more rushing yards. The penalties were even. But Michigan had, count them, 3 turnovers. There's where you lost the game right there, was the turnovers, you guys. And how many times have I told you guys, time of possession, turnovers, yeah, you don't win those. You can best bet, you can look in those categories, and it will tell you what cost you the game. And it plays itself out vividly right here, because all of the categories Michigan pretty much won, even the time of possession. They had the ball almost 7 minutes longer. But those turnovers, they will beat you every single time. As I said, number 22 Illinois 21, number 24 Michigan 7. Number 21 SMU 40, Stanford 10. The Mustangs go to 6-1, and looking at this game, it's the SMU Mustangs are going to be a team to contend with later on in the season if they can get into the college football playoff. This is the team you don't want to see. Kevin Jennings was 17 of 27, 322 yards, 3 scores, and an interception. You had Brashard Smith had 8 carries, 67 yards. And then you had Roderick Daniels had 10 carries for 50 yards. I watched these guys up close. I really love Brashard Smith and Daniels. These guys, you got one that's the faster of the two, and then you have one that's a power runner, and it just keeps going. And look at that. They had 300 yards passing and 180 yards on the ground. This team is going to be a nightmare, whoever has to face them, either in a bowl game or even the college football playoff. And I'm going to be honest with you, you look at guys like, and I remember, I think Moochie Dixon had a 80-something yarder in a game I watched earlier this year. It was an upset game. I can't remember who it was they played, but this team is going to be very exciting to watch. As like I said, Dixon took one to the house from 87 yards. It's the only grab he had all day. Keyshawn Smith's a great player. He had 4 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown. They've got some really good wide receivers out of SMU, and most of you don't realize that SMU is located in Texas. So where do all your football players come? So if these guys don't go to Texas, Texas A&M, Houston, or any of your Texas Tech, Baylor, or any of those big schools, guess what? There's SMU. As I said, the tail of the tape that always seems to drive the point home. You look at 502 yards of offense to 206 for Stanford. And then they only had 33 yards passing the football, and that's Stanford. So you talking about a major discrepancy there that really would have killed it. But SMU's going to have to get down on those penalties. They had 10 penalties for 100 yards. They also had 3 turnovers. Those turnovers are going to have to go if you're going to be successful. I mean, and I will say this, considering you had 3 turnovers, you play a much better team than Stanford, those turnovers are going to cost you. Eventually, they're going to cost you somewhere. So, really, SMU needs to clean those up if they're going to be competitive with the more elite teams. Now, a lot of people are going to say they can't be, but with a passing game and the running game that they have, they can play with the best of them. They didn't have the ball. Stanford had the ball 5 more minutes. We'll look at the production value. SMU Mustangs. Number 21, 40-10 over Stanford. Now, number 19, Missouri, 21, unranked Auburn, 17. Now, guys, when I saw this game going into the fourth quarter that it was 17-3, 17-6, I just knew this game was a wash. Because I was not sold on Missouri in the least little bit at all. Looking at this game and you say, well, what happened here? Auburn just gave it away. I'm going to be honest. It was more about Auburn giving it away than Missouri winning it. Because you look at the numbers. Brady Cook, 11 of 22, 194. Notre Dame and Arizona State transfer Drew Pine, 10 of 21, 78 yards. Peyton Thorne did not have a bad game. But the Auburn Tigers don't have enough fear in opposing defenses so that they can run the football. You got teams that are still selling out on the run because they're not afraid to stop. They're not afraid of the pass. And as I said before, when they get their coveted freshmen on campus next year, that's going to happen. But looking at the whole picture here, we look at the numbers. Auburn had 17 first downs and to Missouri's 20. And looking at the numbers, you look at 354 total yards. But then you back up and say, well, how did they lose this game? I mean, Missouri had 2 turnovers and Auburn only had 1. Well, the one that Auburn had was costly. And that's the thing. You have to always look at it from a value standpoint. Because whether we like it or not, let's look at the Auburn had the ball 32 minutes. And we just saw a game where a team that had 27 minutes was able to manufacture as much as 40 points in a game. It's not enough for you to have the football. You have to be productive when you have it. You have to be consistently getting points. You can't just get, and I'm not just talking about 3s. At some point, you got to get 7. Auburn is still having a problem scoring points. They're getting themselves in positions where they're not doing what's best for them, which is get in the end zone. They're not moving enough. And that's what I've always said. Auburn is an offense. If you have a lack of weapons on the team, the best thing you can do is to motion. Send a lot of motion or eye candy. Give the defenses something to look at. And we saw plenty of games where teams that lost did not put enough eye candy out there. Listen, the more eye candy you put out there, the more opportunities you have for big plays. You can get people out of position, especially if you got an aggressive defense that you're facing off at, that they want to go at the first thing that they see. You have to be willing to make that commitment, putting guys in motion, getting the defense out of position. That is ultimately what it does. It puts players out of position. Number 19, Missouri 21, unranked Auburn 17. Number 17, Kansas State 45. West Virginia 18. Now, this was an impressive win, being that Kansas State had to walk into... Now people are going to look at West Virginia's record and they're going to say, well... Any road victory is huge, because you guys know my motto. When you're at home, you're supposed to win. What? That's why I'm not a big fan of taking the goalpost down and, you know how the rest of this works. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm a firm believer you win in your backyard. You're not supposed to lose there. However, we look at Kansas State's dominating performance against West Virginia, and we highlight Avery Johnson, who was 19 of 29, 298 yards, 3 touchdowns. DJ Giddens had a decent night, but I think what's happening here is you're seeing a lot of guys keying on him. He and Dylan Edwards. He had 19 carries, 57 yards, 2 touchdowns. They were short touchdowns. He did have a 18-yard scamper at one point. But you look at West Virginia, and West Virginia, the home of one Geno Smith and several other quarterbacks back in the day, they're having trouble getting the quarterback situation right. Garrett Green was 9 of 19, 85 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Nico Marcio was 6 of 13, 58 yards and a touchdown. So you're talking about only 143 yards throwing the football. Now, rushing the football, they had 152 yards on the ground on 43 carries. So it's obvious they wanted to run the football. But Garrett Green was huge in that. He had 89 yards. So while you have a guy that is very mobile, at some point the accuracy factor's got to come into play. Even though he had 2 interceptions, West Virginia's going to have to figure out an offense. Meanwhile, Kansas State is showing shades of what they were going to look like 2 years ago. What's got to happen is they're going to have to be this team that can play good defense and wear you out. I mean, now I'm not saying they can't throw the football. This is obvious. They can. They've got some very good receivers in Jaden Jackson. And DJ Giddens is an excellent receiver out of the backfield. He's excellent. He had a 53-yarder for a score. No, excuse me, it wasn't for a score. It was nearly a score. So you've got, and even Keegan Johnson, I like that kid too. You've got a lot of good players here at Kansas State, but the question is, it's just like a lot of teams we talk about, can they show up in crunch time? Can they show up when the lights get brighter? And see, looking at the totality of it, West Virginia had 20 first downs in this game, and they dominated the time of possession. So what went wrong? 2 big turnovers. 2 turnovers. Cost them. Wiped them out. And they ran the ball so efficient. Look at that. 43 carries to 24 for Kansas State. And you guys know Kansas State wants to run the football. So you're talking about a team that had 414 yards, 53 plays. So you got to think. Some team's going to watch this film and they're going to say, West Virginia was able to run over 70 plays, even though they didn't win, but they were able to keep the ball this long. Is that a formula? Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, they didn't win, so that's not a formula. But I think West Virginia's biggest problem is they could not sustain drives. See, a lot of people are saying, well, they look like they sustained it pretty good. Look how many points they look how long they had the ball. Well, that's also a combination of Kansas State scoring quickly and giving the ball right back to them. Number 17, Kansas State, 45, West Virginia, 18. Number 16, Indiana, 56, unranked Nebraska, 7. Now, I'm going to say this. Do I think this game was as bad as it looked? It looked exceptionally bad to Matt Rule. I can tell you right now, this is a dagger in his soul. Because you only have one loss on your resume, and then you're looking like you belong amongst the top 25 teams. And then Indiana, who moves to 7-0 for the first time since 1967, absolutely just mops the floor with you. This has got to be. I don't even know how you, as Matt Rule being Matt Rule, how you even. I don't even know how you wrap your head around this. I mean, it's just not something you can. To me, it's just it's not something I could look at. But let's look at this for a second. Dylan Raiola, the hometown boy from Buford. I'm sure he's not used to seeing this. 28 of 44, 234 yards, 3 INTs. But
Yeah, about.
you, Dylan, hometown boy. And the offense as a whole was not much better. You're talking about 29 carries, 70 yards. They did have a score from 7 yards out. That would have been Ja'Cory Barney. But outside of that, this is not going to be a good look. Do I think Matt Rule needs to go back to the drawing board? No, but I will say this. This shows them where they're not. You know, you don't have the firepower to roll with this Indiana team. And I mean, look at it. You got Justice Ellison, Tyshawn Lawton, and even Kalen Black rushing for well over 200 yards on the ground and for 5 scores. You're not listen. It's going to be crazy watching Indiana go up this schedule and play in some of these other teams. And they are one of the epitome of a nightmare offense to deal with. And you got to give credit to the defense. Their defense is silently good. If we look here, look at that. 304 total yards for Nebraska, which is not bad, to nearly 500 yards of offense for Indiana. So you talking about 2 football teams going in 2 totally different directions. Now, let me rephrase that. 2 football teams that are ascending differently. So you had 3 picks to 1. And you had a total of 5 turnovers. Listen, I don't care who you are. You're not going to win with 5 turnovers. And that was the tale of this story. Now, here's the drawback. Nebraska still had the football longer than Indiana by almost 5 minutes. Oh, yeah. And see, this is when you start looking at the details of the game, it's really awkward, but at the same time, you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, how'd they do that? How'd they do that? Simple. When you turn the ball over 9 times out of 10, you lose. It's not a good look. Matt Rule's going to have to go back and get some things done. Meanwhile, Indiana's 7-0 for the first time since 1967. Number 14, Texas A&M, 34. Unranked Mississippi State, 24. Now, before you guys start yelling and screaming about, oh, this was, it wasn't nothing. Well, I'm going to tell you something. This was a game in the first half. Texas A&M was in a dog fight. Mississippi State Bulldogs. Brr. It was worth a shot. Right, Brad? Connor Wigman was 15 of 25, 217 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. But then let's look at his counterpart over here. Michael Van Buren, 22 of 41, 242, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Now, the completion percentage doesn't jump out at you, but you don't see 2 interceptions. You see 3 touchdown passes. And you got the pick there. But then you look at the running games of these two teams. Well, you got Le'Veon Moss, who had 17 carries, 65 yards, 2 scores. Amari Daniels, 12 for 47. You're looking at, and you got Devon Booth for Mississippi State, 79 yards on 12 carries. Johnny Daniels, 50. As I said, 136 to 125. I still like this kid, Kevin Coleman. 8 grabs, 89 yards, and a touchdown. This kid is going to be, if he comes back next year, he's going to be a eventual all SEC player. He's that good. Then you have Barber for Texas A&M, 6 grabs, 92 yards, and he had a 58-yarder. Yeah. This guy's a baller too. There's a lot of great players in this game that are going to reach their potential at some point. And I see it possibly going to be next year, or it could be a part of this year. A lot of good players were in this game. But looking at the tail of the tape, what really beat Mississippi State was they I always tell you guys, you cannot lose the time of possession, especially when you're at home. And Mississippi State did that. They won the turnover battle. But then you look at everything else. They won the passing yards. They won the rush. No, excuse me. They lost the rushing yards. They won the first downs. So you say it was basically, in a nutshell, you couldn't complete drives. 5 of 16 on 3rd down. You got to finish drives. Whereas A&M was 9 of 14. You have to finish drives. If you don't finish drives, they become the death of you. It does you no bit of good to take 7-8 minutes off the clock and you don't get any points. They lost the second half 13-7. Given that they were only down 20-17 at the half. They were able to, Texas A&M was able to come out, and they were able to not only withstand the Mississippi State crowd, but they were also able to put a couple of drives together on their own. Number 14, A&M 34, Mississippi State 24. Number 12, Notre Dame 31, and unranked Georgia Tech 13. Now, before we jump on the Irish, I want to give a shout out to Georgia Tech and the fans of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Beautiful fan base, and this is also near my hometown as well. I think Zach Pyron is got a lot to learn, and he showed some excellent throws and some anticipatory throws against Notre Dame. And with Hayden King being out, he was able to come in and he really made a good showing, in my opinion. A lot of people are going to look at that and say, well, they lost. Well, one thing he didn't do is despite the 2 interceptions, he made one really bad throw, and I think it was a forced throw. But outside of that, he kept Georgia Tech competitive throughout most of it. Don't let the 31-13 score fool you. Notre Dame scored 17 in the second half. This was a 14-7 game at the half. And then in the third quarter, they put 7 up there, and then they proceeded to kind of hang on with the football. Because you look at Notre Dame's numbers, they're not overly impressive. Riley Leonard, 20 of 29, 203 with an interception that he overthrew his intended receiver, Bo Collins. Jadarian Price had 8 carries, 69 yards. Riley Leonard had 10 carries, 51, and 2 scores. He becomes the 5th Notre Dame quarterback to score 10 rushing touchdowns in a season. Jeremiah Love, 14 carries, 36 yards, and a touchdown. But outside of that, the Irish ran for 168 yards and 3 scores, but it's not one of those games where it looked like, okay, Notre Dame just dominated this game. It never had that feel at all. And regardless of what people will say, Georgia Tech's, they're going to be a piece of work when they can finally put it all together. You look at the numbers, Notre Dame had 23 first downs and was 4 of 12 on third down. Then you have the total yards comparison, Notre Dame 385, Georgia Tech 333. And Georgia Tech actually outgained. And so that's why I say powering was, not granted, people are going to say, well, they had to throw majority of the second half. But I still say for a guy that is really not gotten a lot of reps, he came in and threw the ball efficiently. I mean, the score is not indicative of what he did, but the one thing I thought really was a trouble for the Yellow Jackets is they could not run the football. And that's where I thought King was so huge because, and this is any type of offense, if your quarterback is mobile, there are so many different things you can do when it comes to your offense if it gets stuck. And we'll be talking about one of the games where I felt like the quarterback was the Achilles heel of this football team. But then you also look at Notre Dame outgained. They had time of possession for almost 11 minutes longer. Almost 12 minutes, almost 12 minutes longer than the Yellow Jackets. You can't win if you don't have the football. So that was another huge issue that the Jackets had to deal with. They could not get the ball away from the Irish. And the Irish were having these long, sustainable drives. Number 10, Clemson 48, Virginia 31. Now, once again, I'm just going to say this, and it's going to sound mean. Virginia did have a great offense coming into this game. But once again, to me, I think it's all about the Tigers being able to do what they do. Because we all know when Dabble and them got up 38-10, it was one of those. It's like, call off the dogs. And then Virginia proceeded to score 21 points in the fourth quarter. And made it look respectable, I would say. They did. They made it look respectable. And just going into it, Cade Klubnik once again had a pretty darn good game. I'm still not sold on him as a elite quarterback yet. I know a lot of you guys are going to roast me on this. I'm just not sold on Cade Klubnik. 22 of 35, 308 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Phil Maffa once again, as you guys heard me last week, I said I don't understand why the big games, and this ain't a big game, but I was looking at it, Maffa had 18 carries, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But I don't know. Clemson ran for 194 yards on the ground. Now, the truth of the matter is that can the Clemson Tigers sustain this running game against the more formidable opponents? That's the question I have. Can they maintain this? Can they continue to do this? And looking at the stat column, you see Clemson had 28 first downs to Virginia's 20. This is an improvement, by the way, for Virginia. This is a team that has really been on the bottom side. I'm talking about not really good at all. But now you're starting to see a team that is starting to kind of find its own a little bit. They've got to get the third down figured out. They were 5 of 13. And then let's look at the total yards where Clemson was almost 200 yards better. That's when you can tell the the large margin of talent. And even Clemson had the ball nearly 10 minutes more than the Virginia Cavaliers. And see, as I told you guys, the recipe for upsets. You have to win turnover battle, which it was even. And you got Clemson winning the time of possession by 10 minutes. You got to win those battles. And then you did win the penalty battle. Now, that's not so much written in stone, but if you can look at those three statistics and you win at least 2 out of 3 and you're the underdog, you're either going to win this game or you're going to be right there. You're going to be right there. And then you can throw a fourth category in the total yards, which the Virginia Cavaliers were absolutely obliterated. As I said, 539 to 346. But Clemson 48, Virginia 31, as the ACC is beginning to heat up. And as we will see later on. Number 9, Iowa State, 38. Central Florida, 35. Now, if many of you remember, I did say that I felt like if Central Florida could run the ball efficiently, this could be a dangerous game for Iowa State. But they managed to pull it out and become 7-0 for the first time since 1938. 40 years before I was even born. Brad, we old, but not that old.
It's not funny, Ed. Hey, shut up!
Rocco Becht was 20 of 46, 274 yards, a score, and 2 picks, which turned out to be huge interceptions. Jacuri Brown was 8 of 20, 62 yards, and 2 scores. But that's not what he does. What he does do, he had 13 carries, 154 yards, 2 scores, including a 67-yarder. R.J. Harvey had 25 carries, 196 yards, 2 scores, for a grand spanking total of 354 yards on the ground.
God damn!
That's a lot of running. But then you had Rocco Becht also getting into the act of running the football. He had 20 carries, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Carson Hansen had 9 carries, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns, for a grand total of 256 yards total and 4 scores. But I'm pretty sure a lot of you are going to make reference. Now, if you guys watch your statistics and you watch on television, then you probably are one of those people that believe that UCF lost this game on their own. And I'm almost I'm almost willing to agree with you, because the reality of it is, you're talking about a team that ran the ball efficiently. They won just about every category they needed to win. But the thing that you run into is mistakes. And the Central Florida Knights had a huge blunder. A huge blunder. You can't do it. I'm not going to call his name because it's just too embarrassing to mention. Yeah, he had it at pick 6, but he let go of the football, or he dropped it before he got to the goal line, or before he crossed the goal line. I know what people are going to say. Oh, man, come on. Listen, guys, we've been seeing it for almost, 15 years? You got to cross that plane. But here's the thing. This is the reason why that interception is so flipping huge. Iowa State had 28 first downs, and they were 6 of 19 on third down. They had more total yards, 530, than the Central Florida Knights. And, of course, Central Florida won the rushing attack. That was blown away. Central Florida had more penalties. Iowa State had greater time of possession. What category did the Knights win? So, as always, Mr. CeeLo's formula never fails. Even as close as it was, ladies and gents, you cannot make a mistake that grand and it not cost you. You didn't win not one category required to pull the upset. Not one. And all you needed was your guy to hang on to the football. You could have been the first team that I know of that wins despite everything going against you. Everything. Instead, Iowa State, that's why I'm not going to name that player. Because when you look at the totality of it, it is just that bad. When you had everything riding on this and all you had to do was cross the end zone. Number 9, Iowa State 38, Central Florida 35. They go to 7-0 for the first time since 1938. Number 8, LSU 34, Arkansas 10. Now, I suspected that this game would be a lot closer, being that this game was in Fayetteville. Taylor Green was 21 of 31 for 240, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Garrett Nussmeier was 23 of 34, 233, nothing to report. But Cade Durham had 21 carries, 101 yards, 3 touchdowns. And the Arkansas Razorback running game could not get out of the garage. These Hogs couldn't even get out the pen. I don't know. I just had to say that. But looking at how LSU was able to get some semblance of a running game, it was pretty much over with. But then you see Kyron Lacey really didn't get going either. He had 6 carries for 49 yards. C.J. Daniels had 7 grabs for 86. But you got to give credit, even though they had 235 yards passing, it was the running game that really hurt the Razorbacks. And you can't say enough about the way LSU's running game has started to really pick up. And you're starting to see more of these teams start to lean on defenses as opposed to trying to block these defenses now. When looking at the tail of the tape, Arkansas, they got 10 fewer first downs. They had 3 turnovers, which is always going to kill you. LSU did have 11 turnovers, 4 more turnovers than they did. But everything else, Arkansas was just in a disaster. They weren't even going to... You're not going to win when you have 3 turnovers. That's just not going to happen. 2 fumbles and an interception, you can't have that. But number 8, LSU 34, Arkansas 10. Number 6, Miami 52, Louisville 45. This was a roller coaster ride of a game. If any of you watched this game, this is the game I was flipping back and forth from the Oklahoma game to. You couldn't turn from this. Every time it seemed like Miami was about to pull away, Tyler Shuck and the daggum Louisville Cardinals had a trick up their sleeve. They just would not go away. I'm gonna tell you, if Louisville was winning, Tyler Shuck would be in the Heisman race. Listen to these numbers: 31 of 51, 342 yards, 4 touchdowns. Now, let's look at Heisman possible front runner. Cam Ward, 21 of 32, 319 yards, 4 touchdowns. Both of these guys sound like Heisman candidates, don't they? Hell yeah! Now, looking at this game from a standpoint of, I guess, analyzing it, normally Louisville has a lot of big plays in the running game Today, that wasn't such. And I'm not going to say they had big plays in the passing game either, but they had a lot of intermediate plays, with Ja'Cory Brooks and Colin Lacey as well as Chris Bell. But Miami just, you can't say enough about Cam Ward and his ability to just take over football games. And this, I think you guys watched me on one of my shows and I talked about Xavier Restrepo. I love this kid for Miami. This guy is, I'm going to tell you, he's going to be one heck of an NFL player if he gets in the right, if he gets to the right place. He's 5'10", but he just reminds me so much of a Steve Smith type guy. He's so good. He had a play that just broke open. To me, it was one of the game changers in this game. And then you got Samuel Brown, 3 catches, 125 and a score. And there were so many big plays to be had in this game. And I mean, there were a couple where Cam Ward forced a couple of balls. And you had guys that just couldn't get their hands on it. And to me, that's what a lot of games are defined by. They're defined on which teams can make plays in big moments. Louisville had a couple of opportunities. They did pounce on a couple of plays. They had a couple of big strips in this game. But as far as making Cam Ward pay, because he has been a little bit reckless the last couple of weeks, trying to make things, but then you know how that works, you guys. In order for a quarterback sometimes to be great, as great as he is, he has to take risks. But looking here at the old board, like I always tell you guys, Louisville did not win the big categories. Miami had 3 more first downs. They had more total yards. They did have more passing yards. So Tyler Shuck's still proving that he's a great quarterback in the country. But look at the margin of rushing yards, you guys. 222 to 106. That is definitely not a good sign if you're Louisville. Louisville is not a team that wants to throw it all over the yard. They're not. They're not a team that wants to do that. And then you look at the penalties. They lost that, but the yardage didn't hurt them as much. But then the turnovers were pretty much even, but Miami controlled the football almost 10 minutes longer. It's not what you want to see if you're a team trying to pull the upset. I cannot stress that anymore. I can't stress it anymore. But Miami stays alive at Louisville to go to 7-0 for the first time since 2017. Then we got number 11, Tennessee, 24, upsetting number 7, Alabama, 17. Now, many people are going to see this as an upset, which I can understand that. But Alabama was up in this game 7-0 at the half, and they trailed 14-10 in the fourth quarter. But the story is that Tennessee scored 24 points in the second half. All 24 of their points came in the second half. And looking at the comparisons, the one thing that I will say that stuck out for me, Nico Iamaleava had 9 carries for 44 yards. Yeah. Now, here's the major shocker. Jalen Milroe, 14 carries, 11 yards.
What the
Listen, I'm going to tell you something. Nico was not very good in the first half, and Alabama they basically put a lid on him. And in the second half, I will honestly tell you, don't let the yardage fool you. Like I said, it was 14-27, 194, 1 touchdown, and an interception. But here's where I think Kalen DeBoer needs to get back to. I get it. Tennessee didn't let you run the ball at all. You had a total of 75 yards on the ground. Get this now. Tennessee had over 214 yards on the ground. This was a recipe for disaster. You're looking at a Tennessee team that they get you by thinking they're going to out-throw you. When you think high-powered offense, what do you think? You think throwing it all over the yard, which Iamaleava was able to do later on in the second half, but they also went back to trying to run the football. They had 43 carries, 214 yards, 2 scores. But you can't say enough about how good this defense for Tennessee was. This defense was really good. You get the 2 interceptions that they had, and the pass rush was absolutely great. When you can get to a quarterback with 4 guys, as we'll discuss later on, you got some serious things you can do. Because you can cover with 7, you can cover with 6. There's times if you can drop back 8, if you have that kind of pass rush. And at this level, if you can cover in zone, that is, I mean, if you can cover 8, you can use an 8-man zone. Ooh, woo. And what I saw was, like I said, I saw opportunities that Tennessee had. They kept Alabama at bay until their offense could get it going. And what I saw was a Tennessee team that wore down their opponent and used Nico Iamaleava the way they needed to. They ran him with. They used him to run the football and break down Alabama, which is a counterpart to the next game we're going to talk about, where you look at Dylan Sampson, who had 26 carries, 139 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You go back to this and you watch and really start analyzing what the Tennessee defense was able to do. You even look at how they were able to contain Ryan Williams in a lot of ways. Now, he did have 8 catches for 73 yards, but when I say containment, you kept the big play off the board with him. Tennessee had great coverage all day, but also they had a great pass rush and containment. This is the first team I can honestly say that has totally contained Jalen Milroe all season. I mean, you're talking about 24-17. The Vanderbilt game was a daggone track fest. I think ultimately, Kalen DeBoer is going to have to figure out more efficient ways to get Ryan Williams down the field and get Jalen Milroe out in the open field. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, this is Alabama. You ran the ball 34 times for 75 yards?
Is that your best? That was pathetic.
That ain't happening. Now, let's go look at Mr. CeeLo's recipe and see did Tennessee reach that. First downs, Alabama had 2 more first downs. Total yards, Tennessee outgained Alabama. Turnovers. Wow, this is going to be the first team that made Mr. CeeLo recipe wrong. They had 1 more turnover, and they had the ball 7 minutes longer. Alabama had it 7 minutes longer. And I'm going to be honest with you. This is one of those games that Alabama's going to look back and they're going to kick themselves. Because when you look at this formula is pretty much foolproof. You get 3 turnovers, that's got to turn you into 21 points. It didn't. So, as I said, Tennessee, the Tennessee Volunteers upset of the Alabama Crimson Tide will go down as one of the first teams I've actually had the privilege of critiquing, where the team actually lost Mr. CeeLo's recipe for a successful upset and actually got the upset. Congrats to Josh Heupel and his group. Great job. Go ahead, Rocky Top. Take that goalpost down to the rhythm. Gab out to you, Robbie. I told you the Vols would win it. And finally, the marquee matchup of the week, and the one that has caused me so much grief this week because there's a lot of Georgia fans out there, including Brad. I haven't talked to you yet. But I'm not thrilled with what I saw. I'm going to go ahead and give the score out. Number 5, Georgia, 30. Number 1, Texas, 15. First of all, let's clear up a few things. First of all, I have no respect for Kirby Smart. I have all the respect for Steve Sarkisian because the way he deferred to talk about the incident, he tried to stay away from it as much as possible, but Kirby makes the statement, it's y'all against the world. When I've sat and watched Georgia games, not as a fan, but somebody that is consistently looking to see the holes in their game. And too many times I've seen Georgia play Missouri, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt and get calls. You don't say nothing. There have been so many teams that have been screwed in the past because you the top dog. I actually watched the game this year where you committed pass interference at least 3 or 4 times. No call. That's just letting them play. Here your guy goes and he runs and tries to dislodge a defensive back from his spot. They throw the flag. You sit here on the sidelines talking about holding. How many times do your guys hold? I can tell you right now, in that Clemson drive that you had, the very first drive, your guy was lined up off sides. They didn't call it. Go back and look at the film. He was lined up off sides. They ain't call it. So why you sit here and have this crappy mentality? Oh, nobody likes us. It's us against the world. Maybe nobody likes you.
Stop the cap.
And you have some annoying fans in your fan base. And there's a lot of people I've talked to this week that did not appreciate how you came at the press and how you came at those officials. Yeah, they overturned the call. Rightfully so. I don't care about the rule. There are certain people in the talking about, the rule says this. They trying to screw Georgia. How many times have you screwed teams? How many times I can tell you at least 3 times in that in this game right here. You got guys holding. Heck, you had a guy around the neck. He was trying to come around the corner. You gonna tell me that's not a hold?
Why don't you explain it to me?
I'll explain it to you.
You're classless, Kirby. I don't like you and I never will. You're classless. Sark, you were a class act, buddy. Yes, you were. Georgia fans, you should be disappointed that your coach is out there crying like a big baby. Go Dogs. Brad, this ain't no knock on you. I don't like Kirby. He's a crybaby. But let's get to the game. It was a great game. It was a great game outside of that situation. I'm not, and I'll mention this. Do I think the crowd should have gotten involved like that in order for the play to be overturned? No. I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm telling you like this. Officials need to be held accountable for their horrible mistakes because they change outcomes to games. That should have never been thrown. That flag should have never been thrown. It should have never been a situation that needed to be overturned. Period. And I'm going to be honest with you. SEC officials are the worst. They're the worst officials in the country. You see consistent flags when it comes to pass interference in every conference but the Southeastern Conference. Period. Because certain teams are allowed to get away with more. They are, whether you like it or not. And Georgia defensive backs and Alabama defensive backs get away with a lot. And if you don't like it, Kirby, just go watch the film. While you sit there and complain and cry on the sidelines, your guys get away with way more than they do to y'all. That's facts. But looking at this game, I question whether Quinn Ewers was even healthy. And I was listening to, I think it was McElroy, the former quarterback for the Alabama Crimson. He said he didn't like the fact that they put Arch Manning in here and you're opening Pandora's box. Okay, so Quinn Ewers looked shook. I don't care what you say. I was not sold. I'm going to personally say this. This is going to be a tale of 2 parts to this show, you guys, because I want to talk about Georgia, but I want to talk about Texas too, because there's everybody sitting there like McElroy saying, oh, you're going to open Pandora's box. So maybe Ewers needs a little bit of competition because he looks scared. Look, who doesn't step up in the pocket? I want any of you guys that did not watch this game, look at how Ewers' feet looked like they were in cement. Tom Brady made a living off of stepping up in the pocket. You can ask any defensive player that's had him has been on the field with him. The minute you think you're gonna get him, you're about to get around that tackle. He steps up and you got to go close in at a different angle. And guess what that tackle's able to do? Clean your clock and you pancaked. I didn't see that with Quinn Ewers. I kept seeing him stand back there. And Georgia only got pressure a handful of times on the interior of the pocket, and that's when they blitzed. So this whole, the defensive line dominated. I will say that Walker kid was really well. He did really well. I will give him props. He was taking that tackle to school, but the reality of it is, how many times did he get help from Ewers by stepping up? Not many. And Walker had 3 sacks. You got to do better, Ewers. And this is where Arch Manning excelled. Arch Manning got out there. Yes, he did get sacked once. Or was he tackled? I don't know if it was a sack or a tackle. But this guy showed composure and had arguably one of the best plays of the night. He was able to get out there and rush for a good game. And I will say this. He did miss. It was a play. It was a double slant. One was a skinny post. One was on a deep post. He should have went with the skinny post, and because he went for the deep post instead of the skinny post, and the skinny post was wide open. But see, that's a freshman plan. I was more impressed that Arch Manning was just composed. He looked like the moment wasn't too big for him. Now I disagree with McElroy. Ewers is going to have to prove he is going to be the guy that takes them to the promised land, not Manning. Because here's the truth. Unlike the pros, you have a better opportunity to bring the same team back. It's not so easy in college with graduation and eligibility. And I love Steve Sarkisian. I think he's one of the coolest guys on the planet. Kirby Smart can learn a few things from him. You talk too much. You're in your feelings too much. Now, looking at the Georgia Bulldogs, I like the fact that they got back to what they do. Now, I know the numbers are not going to be reflective of the Bulldogs running the football, but they did start making it a little more of a priority. And, if I recall correctly, right around the middle of the first quarter, late into the second quarter. And to me, that was one of the major points that got Georgia back where they were. Carson Beck was not very good. I mean, 23 of 41, 175, 3 interceptions. And it goes back to what Sarkisian said. So while all you dog fans are running around here talking your trash, yours was just not good. And like I said, I can't stand to see Kirby Smart right now. He makes my eyes hurt. He's just a crybaby. I don't like crybabies. I can do without him. You had several turnovers that, like Sark said, you just did not take advantage. You really did not take advantage. And I think, like I said, Ewers had 2 fumbles that he lost, and he was just shook. Manning had a lost fumble. I mean, you had 3 fumbles combined with an interception. So you're talking about, not only are you, if you're Georgia, you look at, let's look at the tail of the tape. The Longhorns had more first downs. The total yards was 283 to 259. So this was one of those games where Georgia scored. They doubled up Texas, but they did not double them up yardage-wise. So it's one of those where you're just kind of looking around wondering, where'd this come from? And here's the big number that, if you ask me, 108 to 29. That's rushing yards. Georgia was 108 to 29 when it came to running the football. They completely shut this down. And honestly, this is where Sark's got to decide whether he's going to go with Arch or Quinn Ewers. Because Quinn Ewers had 2 opportunities where Georgia stunted, and they left this side of the field wide open. There was no one over here. He stood there. What are you doing? And the other thing is Georgia won the turnover battle. It was 4-3. And even though the game was close, Georgia had the football 1 minute longer. And to me, what was so impressive about both teams was they paid attention to detail. And this looked like one of those games that had more yardage in it than it really did. This is what it looked like to me. You had a game that seemed like it was a lot longer than it really was. I was thoroughly impressed with the way Georgia got back to running the football. Even though Beck threw it more than they ran it, you could see there was a concerted effort by the Bulldogs to throw the ball down the field. And this is the thing you want to do. whether people want to say Bobo is this, that, and the other, the guy's great. He's gotten he's called some great games. And I'm going to be honest with you, this was one. This was one, despite the numbers. But I'm going to say this, dog fans can, exercise their, they're right there at number one. But the truth of the matter is, this is the first game your defense really showed up. And as I said, the truth is, if you're going to gloat Kirby Smart, at least don't say the wrong thing. See, because now you're doing what you shouldn't be doing, which is saying that you're the big bad wolf, which you still ain't beat. Till you beat Alabama, you still ain't the big bad wolf. You ain't, look, and this is what makes it look so bad. It doesn't matter whether you beat Vanderbilt or you beat Tennessee. You still didn't beat Bama. Just saying. Not trying to hurt dog fans. I'm just being a smart for smart. So it can't be you against the world until you beat Alabama. But I thought this was a great game. Georgia deserved the win. As I said, Texas has got some things to think about. They've got some serious decisions to make. I don't agree with McElroy. I don't think you open Pandora's box. I think what you do is you create competition. Competition brings out the best in those that thrive on it. And you sink or swim. Even with the few minutes I saw, I thought Arch looked better. For a kid that didn't get all the first team reps, I thought he looked better. Quinn Ewers either looked hurt or he looked shook. That's all there is to it. But now let's look at the top 25. Let's see what we got going on here. As we are now looking at the AP top 25, which stands as Vanderbilt moves into number 25. We got Navy moving up one spot to number 24. Army stays put at 7-0 at 23. SMU dropped one spot to 22. Missouri dropped 2 spots in a win at 6-1. Sure. Illinois moves up 2 spots. I can see that. The undefeated Pittsburgh Panthers on a week off moved up 1. Ole Miss Rebels stayed fast at number 18. Boise State dropped 2 to number 17. No. Kansas State moves up 1 to number 16. Alabama drops 8 down to number 15. Yeah. Texas A&M stays steady at number 14. Indiana at 7-0 moves up 3. Notre Dame stays steady at 6-1 at number 12. BYU at 7-0 moves up 2. What? No. Iowa State drops 1. Yeah. Might have won the game, but they should have. Yeah. They shouldn't even be in the top 10. No. Even though they're undefeated. Clemson at 6-1 moved up 1. Yeah. LSU is 6-1 at number 8. They stayed put. No, they shouldn't be in the top 10. No. Tennessee moved up 4. You won at home. You don't get to move up 4 spots. No. Miami 7-0 stays put at number 6. Texas drops 4 spots down to number 5. That's fair. Ohio State is now. No, I'm sorry. Ohio State remains at number 4. Penn State undefeated is at Penn State. It stays put at number 3. Georgia moves up 3 spots to number 2. That's fair. Oregon is now your new number 1 team in the country. I would have probably been better off putting Georgia number 1 than Oregon. Oregon, they've had too many close calls. They've had more close calls than Georgia. And the Ohio State game was Yeah. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. Brad, Natasha, and many of you others out there. Let me know what's up. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you're thinking about the top 25. Who's Who should be in the top 25? Who shouldn't be? What did you think about my analysis of the games? Was I too harsh on anybody? Should I rethink about some things? Whatever the case may be, just let me know. Make sure when you subscribe, you hit me down in the comments. Also, go to the Gridiron Gab Triple Option Facebook page. And make sure you go by Instagram and give me a shout out at Mr. CeeLo. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.